All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful and maybe one of the most misunderstood tools in the Azure world, B2C custom policies. We're going to unpack this so-called identity engine and see exactly how it gives you, the developer, complete control over your user's entire identity experience. Okay, let's get into it. So let me ask you this. As a developer or an architect, have you ever felt, well, boxed in by a standard out-of-the-box login flow? Maybe you need to call a custom API during signup to check a loyalty database, right? Or maybe you want to progressively gather info from a user instead of hitting them with a giant form. If any of that sounds familiar, you are absolutely in the right place. Well, that's exactly what custom policies are for. At their heart, they are a super powerful configuration-driven framework. And yeah, it's all written in XML, but don't let that scare you. The best way to think about it, and we're going to use this analogy a lot, is as a programmable identity workflow engine. It lets you define every single step of the journey.
Okay, so before we pop the hood and start looking at all the individual parts, let's zoom out. Let's get that 10,000-foot view. How does one of these custom policies actually fit into a typical login process? It all starts when your user hits that login button. Your application's job is simple. It just redirects the user over to a specific B2C policy endpoint. From that point on, the policy completely takes over. It's kind of like a black box that orchestrates everything, talking to Google or Facebook, validating passwords, calling your APIs, before it finally bundles up all the user's data and issues secure tokens back to your application.
All right, now for the fun part. It's time to open up that black box. Let's take a look at the core components, the gears and pistons, if you will, that make this whole identity engine actually work. You know, it might seem complex, but it really all boils down to just three main concepts. You've got claims, which is just the data about your user. Then you have technical profiles, which are the connectors to other systems. And finally, you have user journeys, which are the master blueprints that define the step-by-step flow. Let's break each one of these down. First up, claims. Honestly, the best way to think about claims is as the currency of the entire system. They're just variables, little pieces of data. It could be an email address we collect from a user, a loyalty ID we read from a database, or even a temporary flag we create ourselves, like is MFA complete. These little bits of data are what flow through the entire policy from start to finish.
Next, technical profiles. So if claims are the data, technical profiles are the actions. They're the connectors. They are the things that actually do stuff. You'll have one technical profile to talk to Google, a different one to validate a password against the B2C directory, and yet another one to call your company's custom REST API. Each one defines a single specific interaction.
And that brings us to the big one, user journeys. This is what brings it all together. The user journey is the master blueprint. It's basically an ordered list of orchestration steps, and each step just executes one or more of those technical profiles we just talked about. It reads like a script. Step 1, show the login page. Step 2, validate the password. Step 3, check if they need MFA. Step 4, issue the token. Oh, and I have to mention one more really powerful component. Claims transformations. Think of these as little built-in utility functions right inside the policy. You can use them to do things like combine a first and last name into a single display name, or maybe format a string to be all lowercase, all without writing a single line of backend code. They are incredibly useful for manipulating data on the fly. So, the user has gone through this whole journey you've designed. They've logged in, they've done their MFA, the works. What's the final output? What's the whole point of this entire process? Well, it's all about securely issuing tokens back to your application. Let's talk about what those are. B2C issues standard JSON Web Tokens, or JWTs. You're mostly going to deal with three main types: the ID token, the access token, and the refresh token. And each one has a very distinct and really important job. Now, this right here is super important, and it's a common point of confusion: the difference between the ID token and the access token. The ID token is for your application. It proves who the user is, and it contains claims about them, like their name and email. The access token, on the other hand, is for your APIs. It doesn't prove who the user is, it proves what they are allowed to do. It grants permission. Getting this distinction right is absolutely critical for security. Okay, we've seen all the individual building blocks: claims, technical profiles, user journeys, and tokens. Now, let's put it all together and trace a real-world scenario from that initial click all the way to the final token. First, a quick look at how the files are actually structured. Your policies are built in layers, which is actually a really smart design. You have the base file from Microsoft, which you never touch.
Then you have your extensions file, which is where you define all of your custom logic and technical profiles. And finally, there's the relying party file. This is the specific entry point that your application actually calls. This inheritance makes everything so much more reusable and organized.
And here it is, the grand tour, the full journey in action. Your app calls the relying party policy, which kicks off a specific user journey. That journey then starts executing its steps. One technical profile shows a login screen. Claims get collected. Another technical profile enforces MFA. Maybe a claims transformation formats the user's name. And the very last step is always a special technical profile, the JWT issuer, which bundles up all the final claims into tokens and sends them back to your app.
Look, I get it. At first, custom policies can seem pretty complex, but mastering this architecture is what gives you ultimate power as an architect or a developer. You get full, granular control over every single aspect of your identity flows, your security enforcement, and the data you send to your applications. And when you're building secure, modern user experiences, what more could you possibly ask for?